So Meghan Markle's jam isn't the only thing that isn't moving the way everyone expected, because over in the UK, William just physically stopped his father from handing over one of the monarchy's most symbolically important homes to Camilla. And the way he did it was so direct and so loaded with constitutional implications that the family is still trying to figure out what the fallout actually means. The document was already on the table. King Charles had chosen the residence, approved the transfer, and was basically ready to put pen to paper to give Camilla permanent control. But before that signature could happen, William walked into the room and stopped the decision cold. Not with a whispered suggestion, not with a delayed memo, not with a soft request to reconsider. The future king declared that no residence belonging to the crown would be handed over without a formal vote. And honestly, the fact that he had to say that out loud tells you everything about how far along this plan already was. Before we unpack the whole mess, if you're into royal deep dives where we actually look at the documents and the timelines instead of just the headlines, hit subscribe to Crown Watch so you don't miss what comes next. Okay, so Charles had expected questions. He probably expected pushback, but he did not expect his son to walk in and physically place his hand over the unsigned authorization. The gesture was calm, which somehow makes it more brutal. William wasn't asking his father to reconsider. He was stopping him. Charles looked down at his son's hand on the document, then raised his eyes and said nothing. He had genuinely believed his authority as king would settle the matter. Instead, the prince had drawn a line across it. Camilla knew nothing until an aide found her in the corridor. She had already discussed staffing, renovations, how the household would operate. In her mind, this was happening. Then the message came that William had blocked the transfer. The queen consort stopped walking, dismissed the aide, entered a room, and closed the door without a word. Humiliation arrived before anger did. And that's a detail that matters, because it explains everything about how she reacted later. William carried more than just an objection into that room. He produced a constitutional briefing, a formal document explaining the legal and financial limits surrounding royal decisions. The briefing showed that permanent control couldn't be granted privately while security, maintenance, and ceremonial costs remained tied to crown funding. The transfer would affect future reigns and the next sovereign's authority. It wasn't just about who got to live where, it was about who would be forced to pay for that decision decades from now. Silence was impossible after that. Anne hadn't been informed. Several family members whose approval Charles would eventually need had been kept completely in the dark. Only a narrow circle had seen the authorization. Crowds applauded, officials bowed, yet acceptance often seemed conditional, as though one change in power could leave her exposed again. Giving her the residence would be more than an act of generosity. It would be his strongest declaration that she was not a temporary figure beside the sovereign, but a permanent part of the monarchy he had built around her. And if you understand that emotional context, his actions make perfect sense. William understood the emotion too. He wasn't blind to it, but he feared the precedent. The prince knew that every private arrangement made now could become a burden during his own reign. A royal asset wasn't simply a valuable property. It was a home held by the crown for official use. Across generations, once personal promises began reshaping those boundaries, the future king believed every limit would become easier to break. Charles saw that resistance as a rejection of his marriage. William saw the transfer as proof that affection had begun to overpower judgment. Neither man believed he was betraying the other. Then he noticed William watching the gesture, and his hand became still. The future king said nothing. He didn't need to. His silence carried the pressure of everything that had already passed between them. Anne opened the late queen's memorandum and began reading. The Princess Royal kept her voice firm through the formal wording. Then she reached the handwritten final line. She paused, swallowed, and continued. Her documented reading confirmed that no permanent reassignment should happen without consultation and recorded approval. Honoring her mother's instruction meant causing pain to her brother, and she felt every word of it. The chamber tightened further when a financial clause was uncovered. The original transfer would have placed long-term renovation, staffing, and security costs under crown funding, even if Camilla later stopped carrying out official duties. What had been presented as a housing arrangement now looked like a permanent obligation imposed on future reigns. That's the detail that changes everything. It wasn't just about who got the keys. It was about who got the bill potentially forever. William finally offered a compromise. He supported Camilla's full use of the residence during Charles's reign with complete dignity, protection, and household support. But once that reign ended, the property would return automatically to unrestricted crown use. His proposal proved that he wasn't trying to drive her out. He was trying to stop a temporary promise from becoming permanent law. The council remained divided. Charles couldn't simply impose the transfer, but he could withdraw it, amend it, or defend it until the final vote. Every voice fell silent as the king reached for the original document. Charles had entered the chamber, determined to fulfill his promise, but the clause hidden inside that promise now forced him to choose between protecting Camilla and protecting the authority he would leave to William. The decision reached Camilla before the official statement was prepared. She would be permitted to use the residence as queen, while Charles remained sovereign, but it wouldn't become her permanent royal property. No future entitlement would be guaranteed. No personal transfer would survive the reign. The distinction looked technical on paper, yet when she heard it spoken aloud, Camilla understood the emotional verdict immediately. She could inhabit the queen's residence, but she could never possess it. Charles had withdrawn the original proposal and accepted William's revised arrangement. The queen consort would receive full protection, staffing, and use of the property during the reign, but ownership and future control would remain with the crown. What had once been presented as a permanent promise had been reduced to temporary permission, and that difference cut deeper than any public statement could admit. The consequences began at once. Officials froze renovation plans involving lasting structural changes. Staffing appointments were reviewed. Documents describing the residence as Camilla's future private home were recalled and rewritten. Every alteration made the decision feel more final because each correction removed another trace of the certainty Charles had given her. Camilla sat alone with the unused keys on the table, paused for only a moment, then continued without answering. Duty had given him no clean victory, only a decision that different people would interpret to their own loyalties. The strongest public moment unfolded beside the Victoria Memorial, where a broadcaster explained that private royal property could be inherited while an official residence remained tied to the sovereign's work and future reigns. An elderly woman in the crowd held a photograph of the late queen and said she would have wanted the rules to survive the people. Her words spread faster than the palace statement. Then Camilla ended the speculation herself. In a recorded public message, the queen consort confirmed that she accepted the council's decision and supported preserving the residence for future sovereigns. Her intervention stopped the dispute from becoming an open war between royal factions. Charles responded by asking both William and Camilla to join him at the next official engagement. The appearance wouldn't erase the wound, but it would reveal whether they could stand together after power, fear, and loyalty had been stripped of all disguise. The public had delivered its arguments, but the monarchy's final verdict would come not through headlines or applause. It would come in the way Charles chose to stand beside the son who stopped him. The final resolution didn't come with a dramatic resignation, an exile, or a royal punishment. It came when Charles entered the state reception with Camilla beside him and William one step behind. For a brief moment, the king stopped, turned toward his son, and invited him forward. The gesture was small, but its meaning was unmistakable. William had challenged his father's decision, yet he hadn't tried to take his place. He had protected the place itself. Charles knew the settlement had changed more than one household. The Royal Estates Council recorded the residence as crown property that could be assigned for use, but never permanently transferred through an unreviewed personal promise. Any future change would require consultation and a documented vote, ensuring that one reign couldn't quietly bind the next. Camilla's future was secured through a separate lifetime housing arrangement funded by private royal resources. The queen consort would retain dignity, independence, and protection without placing a permanent obligation on the sovereign's official estate. The compromise gave her safety, but it also forced Charles to confront the pain behind his mistake. Charles apologized before the engagement. He told Camilla that he had confused possession with security and admitted that his desire to prove her acceptance had led him to promise something he held only temporarily. She didn't punish him with anger. Instead, she told the king that honesty had finally given her what the residents never could, certainty without illusion. William faced his father next. Charles confessed that being stopped by his own heir had felt like a public loss of authority. The prince answered that remaining silent would have created a greater loss later. The monarch didn't celebrate those words, but he accepted their truth. William then refused to claim victory. He asked that no palace statement describe the outcome as his triumph. The future king insisted that the council's vote, the late queen's written instruction, and Camilla's recorded consent had made the decision legitimate. Days later, Camilla entered the residence, not as its owner, but as the queen trusted with its care. She canceled the proposed personal alterations and asked that one room honor the history of previous consorts. The verdict was final. Charles protected his wife. William protected the crown. Camilla secured her future without possessing what belonged to those who would follow. Personal devotion had been corrected before it became permanent royal law. And the monarchy emerged wounded, restrained, but still standing because one future king had the nerve to place his hand over a document and ask whether anyone had actually checked if this was allowed.